All right, we are back with a new Mando review, season 2, episode 7, chapter 15, um, titled "The Believer." Um, Nick, what were your thoughts on this episode? Just drop us your initial thoughts.
This was a very unexpected episode. Like, I mean, every Mando episode we enter like not knowing what the plot is and whatnot. There's always something that like catches us off guard. But I feel like just in the execution, there's just a lot of stuff I wasn't expecting. This one unfolded a lot like a Mission Impossible heist type situation. And I am a sucker for the heist genre. So I feel like even though this is technically a filler episode, I feel like that kind of alleviated some of like the like here we go, like the momentum's like slowed down a little again. I was kind of okay with that in the midst of everything. Bill Burr wasn't as annoying as I thought he would be. His character was a little like grating in the beginning, but just that was because they just broke him out from prison. And I think like just the back and forth between him and Mando was interesting. I will say that his whole speech in the truck about like how they're both the same was a little, I feel like, heavy-handed, a little like on the nose, but like later on I feel like some of it worked, and I feel like it built out this like thematic background for the episode, like just because I it kind of brought back that plot point from chapter 11 where like like how much is like Mando willing to adhere to like the religion he was brought up in, and how much like is he willing to go, and like just that one line about like people do crazy things like when they're desperate. Like I was interested in seeing like Mando actually like, because again Mando's not the most like expressive like person. He's not one to like get pissed off or whatever. So to see him like we see his like frustration, and we see his like kind of anger at the situation like manifest in different ways. I was very surprised to see him just take the helmet off and see Pedro Pascal. I was like, oh my god, I haven't seen Pedro's face since chapter 8. And like I thought that was a pretty just an interesting stuff how they kept like forcing Mando into this whole like situation where they couldn't just shoot their way out, they couldn't like sneak their way in, they had to like, again, they kind of had to like Mission Impossible it, like just have to like do it another way. So I thought that was pretty interesting overall. Um, did I do everything? Oh, the last moment with Gideon, that was top tier. I laughed out loud at that. I was like, that was a whole like perfect exchange right there. We can get into that like when we go in depth, but I think it was overall it was a pretty enjoyable ride. I really like Famiyo's direction, even though it took place on a sunny like planet like chapter 14. I will say I definitely preferred chapter 15 setting more. It just seemed more, I don't know, seemed there's just more going on, some like more details to look at.
Right, and I'll build off of that because I think part of the place where your story takes place is making sure it fits tonally with the events in your story. And I think that this episode fits tonally with the story itself, whereas last episode, the setting, whether it's the time of day or just kind of how clear it was, it just didn't feel like it fit with the darker tone of that episode. Um, but going on with the other stuff, I really liked Mayfield in this episode. And if you know from season 1, I was not a fan of his character at all. I thought it kind of was maybe the worst part of Mandalorian, um, because Bill Burr was playing Bill Burr. But this time I felt that way less. I really love that scene with him, uh, Din. I'm going to call him Din whenever he's not wearing the mask or the helmet, and the Imperial officer, where he's just going like he just can't hold it in. This officer talking about all his friends that died in Operation Cinder. Those of you that played Battlefront 2 know that they basically destroyed a bunch of Imperial planets because that was the Emperor's final or not final orders, the Emperor's orders if he were to die. Um, Pretty nice, right? But I liked his character a lot in this episode. I liked his interactions with Mando. It got a little bit annoying with the like you and me are kind of the same. Like that was a little over the top. I agree with you there. Boba Fett's paint job. What were your thoughts on that?
I was like, it caught me off guard again with this episode because I was just like, one, I was like, I feel like the way how busted your thing was last episode, that must have required like quite a while to like buff out and everything. And I'll be honest, I kind of wish he kept the rugged look. I don't know, it just had that like weathered nature to it that matched like Boba himself. Like, Timur Morrison didn't like clean up like the scar or the kind of like wounded aspects of his face. So like the have the costume all like cleaned up was a I kind of wish they just kept I'm not against it, but I just kind of wish they kept the like Sarlacc acid wasted look just because I don't know, it just seemed cool. It just seemed cooler and just seemed more natural with like just the progression of everything.
I 100% agree. Probably why I brought it up. It really bothers me that they felt the need to do that. I think Boba Fett's a gritty character, and his armor needs to reflect that. Like this, like his face is discolored and there's scars all over it. Why not have his armor represent that too? Like that is who Boba Fett is to us audience members. Um, and I think it adds to something when he comes in the first episode and he flies in with his armor and just destroys stormtroopers in like 2 seconds, and you're like, oh my god, Boba Fett is insane. There's something intimidating to all the imperfections on his armor and the paint being chipped away. Like that's all the stuff you want to see. But I think that's a smaller thing. I think costumes can sometimes be not the best, but I don't think it's make or break. But going back to story, we have Rhydonium, which is interesting. That's a callback. The times I remember it is from the Clone Wars. It's actually from an arc that's C-3PO and R2-D2. And they go on like a 4-episode arc in the Clone Wars, basically where the Separatists are trying to blow up a fleet by packing a stolen Republic ship with Rhydonium and then shooting it into the Republic fleet.
Right.
So that was an interesting callback, but Rhydonium is also used for Star Destroyers, if I'm correct. So that was really interesting to me because like while this is a smaller episode and I was kind of mad that it felt kind of like a filler, because it feels like we're always building to this point,
Yeah.
but it seems a little slow in the build.
Again, yeah, like they love to structure their episodes momentum driven, and then they hit the brakes, and like then they like kick it right back up to 60 the next one, and then they hit the brakes again. It's just like a lot of like stop, start, stop all the way till the end.
Right. And I don't mind. I do mind it. I'm not gonna lie. But it's not like the worst thing in the world. I think it's been frustrating this season because it's like there was a momentum to season 1.
Mhm.
There's like really a quick pace. Mando was trying to get away from everyone who's trying to kill the child, right? And it felt like it kept on moving and moving and moving. And there's maybe only one episode that you could consider filler. This season there have been like 3 or 4, which has been frustrating, to be honest. But what I will say is I liked this episode in part because that whole set piece on top of the
truck.
I'm trying to think. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. We saw it, I think, in Rogue One or one similar to it.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Where they have the Rhydonium and Mando's fighting on the top of the ship. That is such a great fight scene. The little subtleties, like how they make it so when Mando blocks with the stormtrooper armor, he's like, "Oh my god, that hurts."
Yeah,
he's not used to not fighting with Beskar.
Right, it's funny, and I saw that, and I was like, Henry's gonna love this because one of the reoccurring discussions we've had was like Mando feels like invulnerable, like he is invulnerable basically in his Beskar armor, and I feel like since we were also talking about how like convenient it was that he like had the jetpack off in chapter 14, I feel like this was just a much better execution of depriving Mando of his tools and like forcing him to like just like in a more like just like up the tension of like, oh shoot, he's like getting hit, he's getting hurt. I thought they were gonna like crack his helmet open at first, and he was gonna have to like go the whole episode without his face, not knowing he would take it off anyway later on. But yeah, that was a great set piece. That's like what really sold me on the episode.
And that's part of the tension they built, because this is like I had talked about action that kind of felt like it was missing the tension. This action had so much tension involved, because not only is he fighting for his life, not only does he not have his armor, I mean, at multiple points he's pinned down and it's like they're almost ripping his helmet off. And you're like, oh no, right? Because that's like the biggest source of honor for Mando. Or at least that's what we think until we get later on in the episode. I love the raiding pirates. They're seen as bad guys, but I'd be curious if they were just the locals who hate the Empire.
There was a lot of Indiana Jones energy going on there. Like
there
just,
was.
Yeah, like, and then just again the circumstances of the like what was driving the tension just seemed more believable. It's like, oh, we can't go too fast, so we because of the explosive, he doesn't have his armor, because then that's how they're gonna sneak in. And then unlike chapter 14, when what was like take off the jetpack and then like it was gone. Did he get it back in this episode? I completely forgot to look.
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. If he left it, I'm going to be mad.
Yeah, for sure. They'll probably just retcon it back in for the finale.
Yeah. I mean, it'd make more sense. He picked it up off screen. Like, it's perfectly believable. What I will say is Rick Fumiya. I probably mispronounced his name. If so, I'm sorry, man. Because you deserve better. Because really, he wrote this episode too, I believe.
I believe so, yes.
And directed. He did a great job directing. Just like they stepped up the action this episode for me in making me feel the stakes, and that's why I really love this episode. And the writing, very logical, good way from point A to point B. And the more I think about it and the more I'm talking about it right now, the less I feel like it's filler, because I feel like we get a lot of character development. You know, Mando has to weigh his code with the child, right? What is his commitment to taking off his helmet or not, especially when he's seen all these other Mandalorians do it? And what is his commitment to the foundling that he's put in control in, right? And he has to weigh those two things.
Right. Like when as soon as Mayfield was like it needs to do a facial scan, but my old captain's back there, I was like, oh my god, like is he gonna like I kind of knew it implicitly like that he was gonna do it, but I was like at the same time like he is about to break his number one like rule like in front of everyone, and that's what made it such like a powerful like character decision. And there was so much just like layered like just so much of that like layered throughout the episode. Like this was like in some ways Mando's most emotive episode, just because you saw him just physically depicting like what was going through his head, and I thought that was great.
Right, and the shame on Pedro Pascal's face when he takes off the helmet, like that, I felt the shame. I felt so bad for him, because he's so uncomfortable. You know, you could just see it.
I remember like during the whole discussion scene, I was like, I feel Mando could BS his way out of a situation like a discussion like this like faster. But then it dawned on me, he's so like uncomfortable. Like it's like for him, it's probably like being naked in front of like a crowd. It's just like he's like in front. This is probably the first time he's had his helmet off in front of like living creatures. I don't know, ever. So I was just like, yeah, Pedro did like just a great job as well. Like you could see how uncomfortable and how hazy he was at. He was just like so like he had to rely on Bill Burr to like carry the conversation. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I did too. And that's what makes this episode really interesting, because you see what Mando's willing to do. He's willing to take off his armor, which is already kind of pushing it.
Right.
Then when the time calls for it, he's willing to take off his helmet. And I mean, there's just such a progression of character as this guy who was just wanted to be a bounty hunter and, you know, be a part of the Creed, to someone who has like a greater purpose and is willing to do anything for it. And he's getting Grogu back. So what else is there to cover in this episode?
Oh yeah, you go first.
Yeah. The Empire, well, Gideon's ship seems to be small. This operation seems to be bigger than just Gideon's ship. Am I correct in that assumption?
I feel that way, and I feel like again, like we kind of been bringing this up as like more and more like hints about the Empire are shown, like or the Empire remnants, like they're charting this path towards the First Order, and like um is Grand like for instance like is Grand Admiral Thrawn like around? Is like he like stuck? Is he completely like unassociated? He's just off in his own world. Like we don't know, but but I feel like yes, it like Gideon um is like probably gonna end up being like this one part of like this like growing thread. Like they said it, I think it was chapter 12 when the pilot told Cara Dune, he's like, there's something happening out here and like the Republic doesn't know or whatever.
There was a great hint of dialogue between the officer and Mayfield and Din
Mhm.
Djarin in this episode, where he says, the people will realize they don't want freedom, they want order. I
Mhm.
was like, oh, so these people are the people that are trying to push forward the First Order.
Yeah.
Um, so it's all starting. They're starting to push that like this is the Empire, but they're moving towards something else.
Right. Right.
Um, and just the mention of that sort of concept feels like that they're moving towards the rise of the First Order instead of like the Empire struggling to be sustained, like sustain themselves right now. But what were you gonna say?
I was just well, I was gonna bring up the ending, but like if there's anything just because if there was anything like before that, yeah, the Empire discussion was great. Oh, how'd you feel about Boba Fett's usage this episode? Because this was something that was on my mind, like
I
after I watched.
I really liked it. I
Okay.
I think they did a great job because this was my worry.
Hmm.
I didn't want it to become the Boba Fett show. I wanted this to stay about Mando.
Okay.
And the last thing I want is a show about Din Djarin as the Mandalorian, where his character is being overshadowed by Boba Fett.
Okay. That's fair. I don't know. I felt like for me, like I don't know. I felt like he was like under you. Like I get what you're saying, and I do believe that as well. I just feel like for like he was reintroduced, and he was like and like thus far his two like main appearances, he's been like third string, and I just feel like if he had gotten like an episode truly dedicated to himself in the way of Bo-Katan or Ahsoka, then I would have been okay. But I just feel like they tacked on Boba Fett, and it's just kind of like, well, it's like, what are you gonna do now? Like type thing. Like, is he gonna roll off into an spinoff or something, or is he just gonna like leave and that's it? Because it just feels like this was just like a blip of Boba Fett, and then like that was like that's it thus far. I don't know if he's coming back for season 3 again. That might push what you're saying about drawing the focus away from Din, but I don't know. That was just like my thing because he was just like chilling in Slave One the whole episode, and it's kind of oh okay, that's it. You shined up your armor and everything, just sitting in your ship.
Right. I have to say, I wasn't completely sold on the look of Boba Fett with the armor and all the clothing, but this episode, I was like, not the armor itself and the way it's painted, but
Mhm.
kind of the appearance of Boba Fett. Um, they modified a little bit, and I really like the modifications they made. I think it looks a lot better,
All right, got you.
and I feel like it's more of Boba Fett's intimidating self. But that scene at the end where they get picked up and Mayfield just gets the cycler rifle and
Yeah,
Chris Kyle's it right into the Rhydonium part that's open and blows up part of the station or base. I was like, oh my god, that is pretty sick, and it
that's
shows a
that is fair.
progression
Yeah.
of how people can be. We see this in Battlefront 2's campaign with Iden Versio.
Mhm.
She gets alienated from the Empire because she sees what the Empire is really doing.
Mhm.
It's the same thing with Mayfield, which I thought was really interesting. And then they close up the ship, and two TIE fighters come after him. And Boba Fett, any line of Boba Fett with the mask on is
Yeah.
just the best thing ever.
Timon Morrison's delivery is just so good. He's like he knows completely what he's doing. And I remember as soon as I saw they were getting chased, I was like, oh my god, he's gonna deploy
Yeah.
the sonic web. I was like, I've been waiting for this, even though it's been one episode already. I was like, I've been waiting for this, and he deployed it. And I was like, that's it. That's beautiful. Good night, everyone. We're set.
Yeah, that was really, really a great moment there. But let's talk about moving forward Because Mayfield, they're like, oh, he died on it. Oh no, just Mayfield, just run away. We won't tell anyone.
Yeah.
But now it's Cara Dune, it's Din Djarin, it's
Boba, Fennec.
Boba and Fennec. And I'll tell you who else is joining if they have the coordinates for Gideon. Bo-Katan. I
True.
can I'm not going to guarantee it, but I can almost guarantee it.
This is true. The two parties converge.
Because there's that moment in the episode with Bo-Katan that she's like, essentially feel free to reach out to me if you want to join.
Yeah.
There's no way that doesn't happen. And
Mhm.
we get this epic thing of Mandalorians, Boba, Din,
Right.
Bo-Katan's crew, and Cara Dune raiding an Imperial Star Destroyer.
Right.
Or
Right.
a light cruiser, I should say. It's like it's the B-level Star Destroyer.
Right. I mean, it makes sense. Like, Din is just like, I found him. Like, do what you will with this, but I found him and will be there type thing. So, it would definitely relatively help bolster their end. Just knowing they still have the Dark Troopers, that'll definitely help even the odds just a little bit more.
Right. And I think this whole season has to build and has to really succeed in this finale, or I'm going to be a little disappointed in the season, to be honest. One last thing before we wrap up. I mean, I love that mocking scene that they have where
Yeah.
Mando's just mocking everything that Moff Gideon said from season 1.
Yeah. Like, I replayed that like 2 times. I was like, this is such a savage move. And like again, normally he would not have done this. He's like a very like neutral person, but he went out of his way to like stick a knife in the back of like Giancarlo Esposito. Like just like he didn't have to do this, but he went out of his way to like mock him and like threaten him. And I was like, he replicated his speech, and I was like, that's the most savage thing ever. And again, just showing how much like frustrated and anger like Mando is at the situation. Just that moment was just a perfect end because he's just ticked off and he's like, and he's not gonna hold back in the finale.
Right. And Mando took it personal. He's taking this personally. You mess with Grogu, you're going to catch some hands, maybe a blaster rifle, or maybe you're going to see that Beskar steel
Yeah, right.
speared versus that dark saber. I mean, I can almost guarantee that. So the only last thing is they mentioned Mandalore and how Mandalore was destroyed, like Alderaan, and I was
Right.
like, what?
See, I didn't assume it was like the planet was obliterated. I just assumed like they raised the planet like scorched earth style type thing.
Right.
Because Bo-Katan seemed pretty confident that the planet was standing, at least in chapter 11. So I'm just gonna, because like that's what we were saying too. Like a reclamation of Mandalore would have been like is a great season arc that like they're most definitely gonna do something with. So I feel like it's probably just like a scorched earth type thing, and it's just
Right.
like rebuild like the crumbling like infrastructure and whatever.
Right. The thing is, Mandalore was already kind of a scorched earth.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you that watch the Clone Wars or Rebels, actually, they live in domes
Right.
because their whole landscape's like barren. But I'll be really interested how that plays out. I wonder if the Empire may have started this as like a thing that goes around that Mandalore was destroyed, even though it wasn't. And that's where they're hiding.
Mm-hmm.
On a planet that everyone thinks no longer exists.
Right.
So that would be a really interesting point. And I mean, I kind of doubt it, but it's a possibility. I think Mandalore is going to be a storyline that plays out down the line, whether that's season 3 or season 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Moff Gideon dies this season.
No, it would be very unceremonious, and I would label it a complete, like the whole role, a complete waste of Giancarlo Esposito's like talents. Like it'd be a Snoke situation. It'd be like, oh my god, who's this cool character? And then you kill him, and you're never gonna know until an eventual retcon reveals he's a clone. Like, so
Hey, I'll stand
I
by Snoke all day until episode 9.
right, right. But yeah, like he's probably gonna hang around. There's always gonna be some sort of like end of season like tease or whatever. So something tells me he'll sneak away at the end, but I feel like at the same time things are gonna like it's gonna be like the power dynamic between him and Mando is gonna like shift since like now Mando's coming for him instead of the other way around in chapter 8.
And last question this time.
Mhm.
Do you think they get Grogu back this season?
That's tricky. That's tricky. Again, like that's tricky because I feel like it would be perfectly within the Mandalorians like territory to just like end on like a darker note and just like have like all of this work, Mayfield and getting the gang back together, and then all of it is like kind of for nothing. Like
Mm-hmm.
that would it'd be very Empire Strikes Back. I mean, think about it. Like the second chapter of every era of Star Wars has always ended on a darker note. Like the Clone Wars beginning, Han and Carbonite, Last Jedi. Well, that was more of like a bittersweet ending with like Luke dying and whatnot. But the second chapter has always ended for a like triumphant return. Granted, I have no idea how many seasons they want to push the Mandalorian, so like we could be approaching that like midpoint with like season 3, but I don't know. I feel like there's like a high chance they do like they like he's just out of their grasp. Like he misses him by like that much type thing. I feel that could happen.
Yeah. And I'd be curious. I think there's going to be some hint at the end of this episode of either who Grogu was communicating to, what Jedi he was calling out to,
hmm
um, or something that maybe hints to the scale of the Empire, something that hints to the scale of what's going on Mandalore.
Right.
Those would be my 3 predictions of what happens next episode. Otherwise, I'm just really excited for the season finale. I thought this was a really, really good episode. I love the action set pieces. Love the character development of Mando. But that wraps up this episode. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment down below, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.